Jackson for the state.
Defense.
Jessica Gonzalez for Isaiah.
All right. And are you Mr. Varju?
Yes, ma'am.
Are both parties ready to proceed? State,
Your Honor.
defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
All rise for the jury.
And Diana, what room are you in? Okay. Huh? Oh, I'm going to check right now, but if not, that's okay. Okay. All right, I'm going to check right now. We're there. All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, and I'm hopeful everyone was able to find parking. All right, tomorrow parking should be even easier because we don't have jurors called up on Fridays unless a judge specifically requested jurors for that day. All right, state, call your next witness.
State calls Annette Santos.
All right, could you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I-
All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record.
Annette Santos.
All right, and make sure you keep your voice up so that the members of the jury can hear and the court reporter can hear. State.
Good afternoon. Can you please state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Annette Santos, Annette. And last name is Santos, Santos.
And how are you employed?
I'm a sexual assault nurse examiner at Center for Miracles.
What's your education and background?
I'm a registered nurse. I've been a registered nurse for 30 years. Out of the 30 years, going on 26 years, I've been a sexual assault nurse examiner.
What's a sexual assault nurse examiner?
It's a registered nurse. You have to be a registered nurse to at least 2 years. And then obtain training. At that time, it was through the Attorney General's office. I believe now it's through Texas A&M. But at the time I was doing it, the Texas Attorney General's office had nurses that would go out and train other nurses like myself on how to examine children and teenagers and adults and how to talk to them and get a medical history from them.
What educational background do you have?
I have an ADN in a nursing, associate's degree in nursing.
And do you have any other training beyond that? How often do you get training?
So for the same training, every 2 years I have to recertify. The initial training was a little over 100 hours. It was classroom and then clinical hours. Every 2 years I have to recertify with continuing education hours. I have to have a minimum is 10 exams that I do every 2 years. I think I've done like over 100 every time. Just we stay so busy. So that's part of it, to renew that every 2 years.
What types of duties do you have as a same nurse?
So I work at Center for Miracles. So we are at the non-acute, it's clinic. So we're not in the emergency room. So there's 2 types of exams for children and teenagers. It's the same type of exam, but in the ER, they would do the evidence collection, collect for DNA. We do the non-acute cases, so it's been at least 5 days since anything has happened, and by then it's too late for DNA. So a lot of kids don't tell right away, so they come to us for a non-acute exam. At our facility, we also, it's the Child Abuse Assessment Center for Bexar County. So we see children who've been sexually abused with a suspicion of physical abuse, starvation, neglect, things like that. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
And so you said, 5 days. How long does DNA typically stay on the human body?
What they've found, it's been a few years now, it's the latest has been about 120 hours, which is about that 5-day time frame.
So typically by the time they get to you, you guys don't do any sort of DNA swabs.
No, we don't.
How often or how many sexual assault nursing exams would you say you've done in your career?
It's been over 4,000.
Over 4,000.
Mhm.
Have you had to testify as a sane nurse and as an expert?
Yes, I have.
How many times would you say?
Like 10 to 15 times a year, usually.
Okay, 10 to 15 times a year.
Yes,
How many years have you been testifying as a sexual assault nurse examiner?
25 years.
In general, when you have, so you typically, you said at Center for Miracles, you guys just examine children, correct?
Children and teenagers, sometimes we see adults if they're, have some sort of developmental delay. Either law enforcement or CPS or adult protective services might feel that it's more appropriate for them to come to us.
And what, in general, what does your examination of a rape victim or a victim of sexual abuse consist of?
First, when they come in, the parents or caregiver will do the registration paperwork. They'll get their vital signs taken, heart rate, temperature, weight, the height. After that, either myself or the doctor will talk to the child to get a medical history. The kids that come to us, for the most part, are referred to us because they have had a forensic interview. Something gets reported, they get sent for an interview. And what we have asked is if that child discloses touching under clothing or some sort of penetration, those are the ones that we recommend have an exam. So those get referred to us and then we schedule these appointments.
Okay. What does the physical exam consist of?
It's a head to toe checkup, kind of like when they go to their doctor first, check eyes, ears, mouth, listen to their heart, listen to their lungs. And then check extremities for any injuries. The last part is checking the private areas, front private and back private.
Do all children, are the children given a choice in getting the physical exam?
We talk to them about what we're gonna be doing. Sometimes a lot of times they're anxious or nervous, so we show them the exam room and then the equipment that we have, and explain what we would be doing. Sometimes they don't want to do the exam.
Is it unusual for a child not to want the full physical exam?
For the most part, they do it. Even if they're a little anxious at first, we can talk to them and we let them know everything ahead of time that we're gonna be doing. And they'll do it, but it's, once in a while, we can't convince them to get a checkup done.
Which age range refuses the physical exam the most in your experience?
More likely the teenagers.
Do you know why that is?
Sometimes they're a little more embarrassed. They haven't had a doctor checking that part or nurse checking that part of their body. And that they're a little more self-conscious about their body.
As also part of your training and experience as an expert, you said that you oftentimes will take the histories, correct?
Yes.
So what does that involve when you're doing this in general?
The medical history helps us know what to do during the exam, is what I've explained to the children. So if there's suspicion that something happened, I talk to them about that and ask them, what type of contact happened, what body parts came into contact when that occurred. And that directs me to see what areas I need to test for infection once we go into the exam room.
Do the children in your experience tell you everything that happened to them?
Not always. Sometimes they give us a little bit of information at a time. So sometimes they might say something at forensic interview. When they come for their medical, they might give us a little bit more information. It depends on their comfort level, how they're feeling that day, whether or not they're going to disclose. But usually they don't tell us every single thing all at once.
Do children ever downplay what happened to them or deny that it happened at all?
Yes, sometimes they do that.
Do you know why that is?
Just depend, sometimes they're embarrassed, sometimes whatever happens in their, like, we don't know their, like, family dynamics. With the family members, sometimes like the whole family will turn against that one child or that family, because they disclosed something that people didn't want anybody else to know.
Back on November 16th, 2020, where were you employed?
I work for UT, but my clinic site is at Center for Miracles.
Okay. And on that day, did you and another doctor conduct a sexual assault exam on Ava Scott?
Yes.
Were you present during the history or were you present during the whole thing? What part were you present for?
I was present during the exam.
Did she consent to the full exam?
No, she consented to everything, but the private area is getting checked.
Okay. Did she give an explanation for that, or did she just not want to participate?
I don't know if she gave, I don't remember if she gave an explanation.
If she, did you think anything unusual about her not wanting the full exam?
No, like I said, sometimes they don't want to do it, and we can't change their minds.
What did she consent to?
She had her eyes checked, listened to her, checked her ears, her mouth, listened to her heart, the lungs, checking extremities, and testing for infections.
What types of infections?
A throat swab was done and a urine sample was collected, and typically we test for gonorrhea and chlamydia, and those were negative.
Okay, but she did consent to those testing.
Yes.
Was there anything unusual about her demeanor or anything at all during this exam?
No, not that I know.
I'm gonna pass the witness, Your Honor.
Defense?
Thank you. Ms. Santos, my name is Jessica Gonzalez. I'm going to ask you a few questions about your testimony and the exam. If you don't understand any of my questions, just let me know and I'll be happy to rephrase, okay?
Okay.
All right. So, you stated that you were present during this exam.
Yes.
Now, I know this sounds kind of like a ridiculous question, but were you present when the alleged sexual assaults actually happened?
No.
Okay. So all of the information that you collected is based off of just what this one person stated, correct?
And the forensic interview information.
So you received the forensic interview
We
information.
receive, when we get the referral,
Mhm.
it's a small paragraph about what's happened. And again, we've asked them type of contact, what body parts touched. So that information is sent to us.
Okay, but that information in the forensic interview is also solely based off of what one person is alleging, correct?
Yes.
There's no other additional investigation that is done or evidence collected in this portion of the investigation.
As far as the investigation, like the detective and the CPS worker would do their investigation.
Correct. But you're solely there to be able to collect any medical evidence if there's medical evidence to be collected.
To do the exam, yes.
And in this particular case, since there was no physical exam that was performed, there was no evidence collected, correct?
Right.
I'll pass the witness. Thank you.
You said you were acute, correct? So it's longer than 120 hours.
Yes.
Had she consented to the full physical exam, if she was saying that the last contact had been weeks, would you have expected to find any physical evidence on Ava's body?
Most of the exams are normal, even for the non-acute cases that we see, a lot of the acute cases when it just happened, most of those are normal as well.
What do you mean by normal?
No injury, no bruising, no tearing, scarring, things like that.
Why is that?
That part of the body can heal very quickly without there leaving scars, without there leaving bruises or tears.
So in this case, if it had been weeks at the very minimum since the last contact, you wouldn't have expected DNA or to find any physical evidence.
No.
That's the witness.
Defense?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse, Your Honor.
I'm okay with excusing her.
All right, you may step down. Call your next witness.
State calls Yolanda Scott, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, what's the last name?
I believe it is Scott, Your Honor, but we can clarify too.
All right,
There might be
thank
some.
you.
Is she here?
All right, if you'll take a seat here, please. If you can raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up so that the members of the jury and the court reporter can hear. All right, if you'll state your name for the record.
Yolanda McBurr Scott.
All right, state.
Ma'am, would you mind just spelling your name real quick for the court reporter's purposes?
YOLANDA. MCBRAYER -SCOTT.
How are you this afternoon?
Good.
Ma'am, are you from San Antonio?
Not originally,
How long have you been in San Antonio for?
on and off. A lot.
Where were you living in 2020?
At the beginning in Canada, and then we moved back to the States.
And when about did you move back to the States?
I crossed the border March 4th.
And ma'am, what do you do for a living?
I'm a server.
Server. Fine dining? Where at?
Blue Steakhouse.
How long have you been there for?
Couple months.
Now, ma'am, are you currently in a relationship? Are you currently married?
Married.
Do you have any children with the person you're currently married to?
No.
Do you have any children at all?
Yes.
How many children do you have?
Biologically 5.
And if you could, what are the age ranges of your 5 children?
27 to 18.
And one of your children is Ava?
Yes.
So ma'am, I want to go back to kind of that 2020, when you guys came back to the States. Who were you living with at the time?
My mother.
And who all lived in the house?
My mother, my husband, myself, and my 2 kids.
Which
Ava
two?
and- Ava and Corey.
And back then, to the best of your recollection, how old about were Ava and Corey?
They were 14 and 15 when we crossed the border.
And just in very general terms, what was the family dynamic back then between the 5 of you living in the house?
Well, we intended to cross and get our own place, but COVID happened, so we decided to all stay together. I'm not sure what you mean, other than that.
No, that helps. So with respect to Ava, would she ever spend the night elsewhere, or was?
Yes, during COVID, she stayed at Katie's house sometimes, her best friend, and Circa, my daughter's.
And about how far away did Circa live from, or how far away was Circa's place of residence from your place of residence?
Maybe 8 minutes. A few miles.
And about how often, again, best approximation, do you think Ava spent with Sirica or spending time at their house?
Pretty often. She helped out a lot with Isaiah, with Nikolai.
And how well did you know Circa's, I should say, significant other at the time? How well did you know that individual?
At the time.
Mhm.
I had known Isaiah approximately 6 years by then.
And just to be clear, you knew Isaiah before he started dating Circa.
That's correct.
And just for total clarity, do you recognize Isaiah in the courtroom
I
today?
do.
Would you mind pointing him out by an article of clothing?
Gray jacket, peach shirt.
Your Honor, may the record please reflect that the witness has correctly identified the defendant. So where exactly did you meet Isaiah initially?
At the JW Marriott.
Are you talking about the Hill Country San Antonio Resort?
Yes,
Did you both work there?
yes.
What did you guys do there?
We worked for Civil Moon. I believe he was a back wait and I was a server.
Any of the other restaurants or just mostly Cibolo Moon?
Some banquet stuff, but mostly Civil Moon.
It's a nice property. Okay. How, to the best of your knowledge, did Isaiah and Circa come to be in a relationship?
Circa started working at the JW Marriott and they became friends and began a relationship. I actually didn't know about it for a while.
How long after they started dating did you essentially find out about it?
I think it was right before they actually became a couple. I would say a few months, maybe.
And then you know why we're here today.
Mhm.
So I want to take you back to kind of pre-summer 2020, kind of the April-ish time range. If you want to take me back to the day that you found out everything was happening, where were you when you started that day?
In the garage having coffee,
And who were you having coffee with?
my husband.
And after you were done having coffee, where did you go?
I never left that spot.
You never left that
Pretty much all
spot.
day.
So who then came into, who did you have a conversation with after that?
Well, Circa called.
Circa called you, and what did, without getting into what she said, what did Circa, what was the nature of your conversation with Circa?
She called myself and Isaiah's mother collectively, crying. Because she had found information in regards to this case.
And what was her, you said it was a three-way phone call?
Yes,
And what was Circa's emotional state at the time that this phone call was being made to you?
she was crying pretty intensely.
Any other things you could glean about, again, just her demeanor over the phone at the time that that phone call was being made to you?
She was very upset and couldn't catch her breath.
And going into a little bit further detail, what did she relay to you and Isaiah's mother?
That she found information.
Sustained.
After the phone call from Circa, what did you do next?
I called the police. I'm gonna back that up and say I took Ada's phone and then I called the police.
Okay, and we'll go piece by piece. Why did you, the phone call happens from Circa. Why did you then take Ava's phone?
Because Circa said that the information.
Excuse me, just one second. The objection will be sustained.
So
You're not
without,
allowed to say what somebody else told you. You understand?
Mhm.
All right.
so just a moment of the court's time, Your Honor. Without getting into, of course, what Circa said exactly, what was, again, the nature of what she was calling about?
Concerns about a relationship between Circa, Isaiah and Ava.
And was that new information for you?
Sort of.
Sort of how?
I had my concerns.
And why did you have concerns?
I don't know.
Like intuition-based concerns or small signaling concerns? If you can best explain what you mean by that.
Mom concerns. They had. Something seemed to shift in the way that they behaved.
What changes did you notice?
Isaiah would pick her up randomly to babysit and then come to find out that Circa was asleep or not present. Constantly picking her up, she had things she shouldn't have after being there, like a vape.
And without getting into what they stated or what they said, did Circa send you any photos or anything to kind of corroborate what she was relaying to you over the phone?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Ma'am, I'm showing you what's been already marked as State's Exhibit 2. Do you recognize what those are?
Yes.
And in general terms, again, without getting into what they say, what are they?
Messages between Isaiah and Ava.
Okay, and are they a fair and accurate depiction of the messages you viewed from that night? Do you want to take your time to just review them and take a look at them?
Yeah, I remember these.
And these were the messages that she sent to you.
Yes.
And did these messages cause concern?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would reoffer, again, what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit 2.
Yes.
Yolanda, my name is Jessica Gonzalez. I'm gonna be asking you questions regarding State's Exhibit 1.
State's Exhibit 2.
I'm sorry, thank you, State's Exhibit 2. That is a printout of a PDF, correct?
Yeah, I assume.
Now, may I approach your Honor?
Yes.
Taking a look, this is 5 pages, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And not all the pages are showing the same image, correct?
Correct.
Looking at page 5, I believe. 6, you can see it. I'm sorry, 5, you can see it. Without going into the words that are on here, what is this a picture of?
I don't recall.
Okay, you didn't take these pictures, did you?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
You don't
I
recall?
don't recall.
You just testified with Mr. Dunn
Mhm.
that Circa sent you these pictures.
She sent me pictures
Okay, so,
of these messages. I don't know if those are these printouts, but yes.
okay, so you don't know. You don't know if these are the same things that you were sent.
Those are the same messages.
I'm not asking if they're the same messages. We're talking right now about the pictures.
It's been 4 years. I don't know.
Okay. What is this along the side? Can you make out what these are over here on the right, left-hand side? These black dots,
Can I make out what they are?
right?
I believe they're Isaiah's
Yeah.
profile because I remember this top part right here. I haven't seen his profile in a long time, but it looks the same if I remember correctly.
This black bottom and a white top.
Yeah, well, it was. Now I can't remember what it was before, but.
Because these are blobs on this printout. So you're saying the blobs, you recognize blobs to be Isaiah's profile.
If I remember correctly, yes.
Okay. But right here, right now, State's Exhibit 2, you did not take these pictures. These are what Circa took pictures of, correct? And sent to you. You just testified Circa sent email or sent you pictures.
I believe these are the pictures that Circa sent to me.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you still talk to Circa?
No,
Does Circa live here in town to the best of your knowledge?
Objection relevance?
All right, that's outside the scope of voir dire. The objection will be sustained.
Your Honor, we can take our.
All right, if y'all approach. Excuse me, could you pass me? State Exhibit 2. Right. The defense's objection to state's exhibit number 2 is sustained.
Now, without going into, again, the nature of the words on the paper, what was your reaction to seeing what was sent to you by Circa?
Reaction? I,
You saw the messages,
or emotion.
either or.
My reaction was to go take Ava's phone or have Ava bring her phone to me and then call the police.
And why did you take Ava's phone?
In case there was any evidence on there that she would delete.
And how long after you took Ava's phone did you call the police?
Immediately.
And how long after you called police did they come to the residence?
Within an hour.
And when police arrived on scene, who was all on scene with respect to the members of the household?
Everybody.
And I guess going into just a little bit more of maybe the emotional character of yourself at the time, if you had to put it in words, happy, sad, incensed, okay,
Sad, angry,
why?
because we trusted him. It was part of the family.
And you felt that trust was betrayed?
Very much so.
And after the events took place that day, how did the nature of your relationship with Ava develop or change?
I don't know. I think that naturally, she's my daughter, she's my baby.
So in an effort to best parent, and please take your time. And afterwards, after that day, with respect to looking out for her, what actions did you try to take to help your daughter?
I don't recall, there were a lot of things. Ava had been previously hospitalized, so I took measures to make sure she didn't kill herself. Or anything like that, because she had some emotional, mental health issues at the time.
And so what measures did you take?
Well, we talked. And decided that, we would hospitalize her for a couple of days just to keep an eye on her, a better eye.
And where was the decision made to hospitalize her?
I don't recall, it's on 1604, I think. There are a couple we.
And how
our
long,
insurance,
and about how long, to the best of your memory, was she there for?
couple of days, I think.
And when she, either before or after, did she admit to you all the things that happened between herself and the defendant?
She said no. You're welcome.
And when she denied it, did you believe her?
No,
Why not?
because I could tell she was lying.
How could you tell?
I know my daughter.
And with respect to knowing your daughter, what things would you look at to best determine that, again, you didn't believe she was telling the truth to you at that time?
Well, she didn't lie. She just didn't tell me everything. So she did tell me some things.
And what was her emotional state at the time when you would have those conversations?
Well, at first she denied it, and then as we talked, well, we didn't really talk very much. She'd go to her room and I would think. And then, we'd sit down again and I'd just explain to her that she may not understand what a big deal this is because she's 14, 15 by the time we found out. But that she needed to be honest, cause the cops were gonna go through her stuff and we were gonna find everything and she just needed to. I think she was worried about Nick, but a big concern at the time and. And then she finally just, she spent a couple days in the hospital and she came out and she said, you know, I know, I need to. Be honest, I think she still had a lot of trouble getting there. It was very personal.
And how do you think your words affected her?
Well, I don't know.
And after she was released from kind of that medical care, you guys had further conversations about, again, the nature of what happened.
Not really. We had conversations about honesty and integrity and accountability. We had, she wrote her sister an apology letter on her own.
And do you
We
happen to
didn't
know?
have conversations about what actually happened.
Okay,
It
do you have to?
was-
Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Okay.
I break it up so often, so I don't mean to cut you off. You had mentioned the apology letter. If you know, what was the nature of the apology written?
She said that she knows that she played a part and that she's sorry that she didn't think more about how it would affect Circa and the family as a whole and Nikolai in the long run.
Do you think it's fair for a 14-year-old to take any blame in what happened?
I think it's fair to allow her to take the blame that she thinks is net, that she should own up to. Yeah. I think she knows right from wrong. I think she knew back then right from wrong. It doesn't change her susceptibility at 14, but yes.
And just two small kind of clarification questions. You had mentioned earlier about some of the time spent with Circa. Were there any rules with respect to Ava's presence when she stayed over there?
Yes, I asked that she not be left alone with Isaiah or her brothers, the boys I called them.
And what was maybe the genesis or the purpose of said rule?
Predators lay everywhere, and as a mom, I put a lot of rules in place over the years to try to protect my kids.
Did this have anything to do with Isaiah specifically, or was it just
At the time, no.
a later yes?
I mean, by the time we found out, I knew she wasn't going over there.
And if you know, to the best of your knowledge, was that rule always being followed?
From what I understand, no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Depends.
Ma'am, my name is Jessica Gonzalez. I'm asking a question about your statements and your testimony. If you don't understand anything I'm asking, just let me know. I'd be happy to rephrase, okay? Now, you were talking about, so far you talked about 3 of your children. There's Ava, your youngest daughter. And then there's Circa, who's 8 years older than Ava, correct?
Yes,
And did you mention Corey?
yes,
Okay. Is Corey and Ava still living with you up until now?
Objection relevance.
That'll be overruled.
You can answer.
Ava lives with me.
Where does Corey live?
He lives with my mother.
And how far away are those houses? Are they close?
Mm-hmm.
Did Corey bring Ava to court yesterday?
We all came together.
Okay, so was that Corey that was sitting back here receiving the text messages?
Yes, I don't know about the text messages, but
Okay, let me ask you this. Were you guys texting while Ava was testifying?
no,
Did you guys all leave the courthouse together?
yes, in 2 separate vehicles.
Were you guys together last night at any point in time?
Yeah, I mean, yes,
Did you guys discuss this case?
no,
Has have you come to the district attorney's office for court cases before? Have you been here to this courtroom before?
For this, yes,
Have you spoken with the prosecutors about this case?
yes,
How many times approximately?
I have no idea.
Can you guess? Is it more than two?
15,
Oh, sorry, 15?
probably, give or take,
You and Ava?
several, all of us, whoever's needed at the time, yes.
And you've spoken with this prosecutor in particular. There have been other prosecutors, right?
I've not spoken to these two until recently.
But before it was
Yes.
Brittany, Mitchell, and Michael Villarreal.
I don't remember names, but yes,
And then Marina's the advocate, the one you probably spoke with, correct?
yes.
Now, in speaking with them and meeting with them, have you reviewed any of your statements before you came in here to testify?
No,
Did you ever give a handwritten statement to anybody?
I don't know.
Let me ask you this. So you testified talking with Mr. Dunn that you were right before, or I'm sorry, the day you received the phone call from Circa, you were sitting at home drinking coffee in your garage with your husband, and you've been there pretty much all day, right?
Yes,
What day was that?
I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this way. You described it as soon as you received the information, you went and took away Ava's phone, and then you went and immediately called the police.
Yes,
And you spoke to the police in your garage, correct?
that's correct,
And you gave them all of the information that you had to give them, right?
correct.
But you remember it as being that day. You called the police immediately.
Yes,
Absolutely. That is what happened.
yes. As soon as right after Circa called, I immediately called Ava, had her bring me her phone, and want to start her and jump in her room, but. And then she gave me her phone and I called the police.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we need to take up a matter outside your presence. So I'm going to give you a short break here. And I'll have y'all come back at, I'll say 2:45. It may end up being sooner than that, but no later than 2:45. Remember my previous instructions. You're not to start deliberating internally with yourself or each other. You're not to talk to each other about the case. You're not to do any investigation or watch anything. Everything that you need to know about this case comes from. Thank you. Okay, next time I say that, I want in unison. So everything you know about this case is to come from. All right, thank you. All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors.
I was gonna say, I can, but they switch it over.
Whichever is easiest.
So yeah, we don't have it burned or anything,
Yeah, no,
so
it's
yeah.
okay.
Oh, okay, sure. This is not on the record.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Invite you there.
All right, it's okay. All right, everyone, please be seated. All right.
Defense is your witness.
Now, we took a break, like you said, this has been 4 years ago, right? Is
Yes,
that a yes?
yes.
So since it's been 4 years, some of the details aren't exactly clear as they used to be. So we took a break and you had a chance to review your statement to the police officers, correct?
Correct. Well, a portion, piece.
A piece of it. So now that you reviewed that statement, do you remember now that the message and the text and the conversation from Circa happened on Friday, October 16th?
No,
You don't remember that?
no.
All right. So you reviewed your statement, and do you remember telling the officer on Friday, my daughter, my 23-year-old daughter, Circa, called me?
No. I don't remember having that, saying that.
Do you remember just watching your statement?
Yes,
Did you, as you sat there and watched it, did you hear those words come out of your mouth?
yes,
Okay, so you heard yourself saying on Friday, my daughter, my 23-year-old daughter, Circa, sent me this information.
no, I believe that I said on Friday, Circa opened or something. If we play it again, I could probably show you. I don't believe I said anything like sent me.
Okay, but the important part is on Friday.
Sorry, I was just being clear. I don't remember, but I did see the video just a minute ago.
And did that refresh your memory that that happened on Friday?
No, it did not.
Okay. So the officers come to your house on Tuesday, October 19th, correct?
According to that, yes.
And so there's a 4-day gap between when you received the information, however it is that you received it, and when you called police officers, correct?
If I received it on Friday.
And so that would be different from what you just testified to this jury, saying that you contacted and called the police immediately.
I believed that I did. And I remember dressed differently than that.
Now, you stated that one of the things that you did when Circa gave you this information was you took your daughter Ava's cell phone, correct?
Correct.
At that time, did you have the passcode to her cell phone?
No,
So you had no way of accessing the information in that cell phone, correct?
I don't remember if I accessed her phone.
You don't remember if you opened up the phone or deleted anything?
I know I didn't delete anything. If I opened her phone, I know I wouldn't have deleted anything.
And you also stated because you were concerned for Ava, you took her to a hospital. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Did you take her to the hospital before you called the police or after?
I don't recall.
And she was in the hospital for a few days, correct?
I believe so.
Now let's go ahead and go back and talk about Circa. At the time that all of this happened, you testified that Circa lived 8 minutes away, correct?
Give or take.
Now, what is the relationship between you and Circa right now?
She's my daughter. I don't see her.
But she still lives in San Antonio, right?
Correct.
Now, you stated that when Circa had called you, she was at that time with Isaiah's mother, correct?
I don't know if she was with her. I thought we were on a group call.
But somehow Isaiah's mother was piped into this conversation,
Yeah,
right?
that's correct.
Now, when the officers came to your house and spoke to you outside the garage, at that point in time, you had Ava's phone, right?
Yes,
And did you give the officers Ava's phone on that day?
I believe so.
When was the phone released from SAPD property?
Months later.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Ma'am, I'm handing you what's previously been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 3. Do you recognize this document?
No.
Okay. Can you go ahead and read through it?
Okay,
Okay. Is this your name on that document?
yes,
Is that your signature on that document?
yes,
Is that document dated with November 9th, 2020?
yes.
What is 3730 IH 10 East, if you recognize that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I believe it was the location that I went to meet the detective.
Okay. Is this your initials on the document?
Yes,
Now, is this your signature or is that somebody else's
it's
signature?
somebody else's.
Okay. And then what kind of phone did Ava have back in 2020?
That says an iPhone, I think.
Okay.
Are you offering?
I'm sorry, any objection? Your Honor, at this time, I offer into evidence Defendant's Exhibit 3.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Defense exhibit number 3 then is admitted without objection.
Now, you mentioned that you spoke with a detective regarding all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that a yes, ma'am?
Yes,
Now, did you go down to SAPD headquarters to speak to the detective? If you remember.
I don't remember. There were many times we spoke, several over the phone. I went when she asked me to.
Okay. And do you remember approximately when in the investigation was that? Was it a week after you made the police report, 2 weeks, anything like that?
I don't remember.
Now, do you remember when you spoke with the detective? Oh, I don't know if I asked you this. I'm sorry if I already did. Do you own this cell phone? Is that under your name?
It was under my plan, I believe.
Okay, so it's under your plan, so you're the owner of this cell phone. Now, when you spoke with the detective was asking you whether or not you would give consent to search this cell phone, correct?
Correct.
And you gave the San Antonio Police Department consent to go through the cell phone.
Yes,
Did the officers or the district attorney's office ever go through it with you, the evidence that was found on the cell phone? Did they ever review that or let you know what was found on the cell phone?
I don't think so.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you have a computer in your home? At that time in 2020, did you have a computer?
Probably,
Did you have access to Ava's Instagram account?
no,
Did you have access to Ava's Snapchat accounts?
no,
Did you have access to her Messenger accounts?
no,
Did you have any online access to Ava's text messaging through iPhone?
no.
Now, when you admitted, I'm sorry, let's go back to Ava being in the hospital. You testified on direct examination that before she went in the hospital, she did not admit anything to you. Isn't that correct?
No, I testified that she did not admit everything to me.
Okay, she did not admit everything to you.
That's correct.
Now, when you sent her to the hospital, isn't it correct that you told her she was not going to be released from the hospital?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
This is the witness that made the statement.
Your Honor, it's still an out-of-court statement.
All right, re-ask your question, counsel.
Did you ever threaten or motivate Ava to get out of the hospital by admitting what happened?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
Never,
You never made that statement.
never,
Okay, so if Ava came in here and testified, you weren't present when she testified, right?
right,
So if she came in here and testified that you, I said threatened, but Ava clarified and said that you motivated her in order to get out of the hospital by telling her that she had to admit to a relationship between her and Isaiah.
Objection, not a
That would be a
question.
lie.
I'm sorry, what is your objection?
I spoke too soon, Your Honor. My apologies.
All right, you can answer the question.
I don't think I understand.
Okay, so Ava was here testifying yesterday, right? You were upstairs in the district attorney's office, right? So you don't know what Ava said while she was in here testifying. I need you to answer verbally.
No, I don't know what Ava said.
Okay, so if Ava came in here and testified yesterday that you motivated her to admit to a relationship between her and Isaiah, that would be a lie by Ava.
I guess that depends on, I guess I may have motivated Ava to tell the truth, whatever that truth would have been.
And
But I wouldn't say that I motivated or suggested or asked Ava to say that she admit that she had a relationship. I wanted Ava to tell the truth, but it did not have anything to do with how long she would be hospitalized.
But when you say that you motivated her to tell the truth, you believed the truth to be that her and Isaiah were having a relationship. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
Okay, and you believed that off of something you saw, correct? Text
Yes.
messages, or I'm sorry, some sort of communication. You never saw a physical relationship between Isaiah and Ava, did you?
I never saw a sexual relationship between Ava and Isaiah at the time.
Thank you for the clarification. You never saw any sexual relationship between Ava and Isaiah.
Correct.
So you believed it to be that they were in a sexual relationship, but that was based off of information that you received from somebody else. Isn't that correct?
By the time Ava was in the hospital, she had told me that some of it was true.
I'll pass the witness here.
All right, state.
Just a few more questions, Your Honor. Ma'am, you had spoken on cross-examination about how frequently you came into the office. You said 15 times. Was that 15 in-depth interviews or was it more like checking in?
It was more like checking in and just finding out the next steps, a lot of waiting.
And when we previously spoke on direct about the phone call from Circa, just for clarity, where were you standing?
I believe I was in the garage. I mean, I saw the tape and I'm wearing different clothes than my memory has. I was in my robe when that phone conversation happened in my memory. So honestly, so much happened over the course of just that emotional time. I don't know.
Do you remember a lot of things that happened for almost 4 years ago?
No.
On
I don't
cross,
remember what happened last week.
on cross, you had briefly discussed your current relationship with Circa. Why don't you see her anymore?
We saw her for a while. Isaiah put his foot down, didn't want Nikolai over unaccompanied. But Circa didn't want to be around Ava. So it just kind of drifting. She's slowly becoming over more and more.
No further questions, John.
Defense?
No questions,
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse from the state, Your Honor.
Subject to recall depending on the expert.
All right, you may be asked to reappear by either party. Just make sure you're available. All right, thank you. You may step down. State, call your next witness.
State calls Detective Mendez.
Could you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. All right, you can have a seat. Make sure you keep your voice up so members of the jury and the court reporter can hear. And if you'll state your name for the record.
Gina Mendez.
Right, state.
Good afternoon, Detective Mendez. I want to go ahead and adjust your mic, make sure it's at a comfortable spot for you so everyone can hear you. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Detective Mendez. I am a detective with the Special Victims Unit for the San Antonio Police Department.
How long have you been with SAPD?
I have been with them for 23 and a half years.
When did you make detective?
I was promoted in 2016.
What do you have to do to make detective? What sort of training?
First, you have to take a written exam, and based on your scores and how many positions are available, determine if you're promoted.
Where all have you been assigned as a detective?
As a detective, I've been assigned to patrol in the position of a uniformed evidence detective, which I collected evidence and photographs of different crime scenes. And then I got to the Special Victims Unit in June of 2020.
Okay, so June 2020.
Yes.
What is the Special Victims Unit? What do you guys deal with?
I primarily deal with cases involving sexual assault and occasionally family violence.
When you say sexual assault, what kind of, does this cover adults, kids, what all?
It covers all.
How many sexual assault cases would you say that you investigate on a yearly basis?
It's hard to tell, hundreds. Sometimes we get between 20 and 30 a month.
How are these cases are assigned? Do you get all of them or do you guys share them?
No, we share them. There's, a certain amount of detectives on the unit, and they try to be fair about how many each detective gets assigned.
During your course of being an SVU detective, have you what's kind of the process for when you get a sexual assault allegation, especially one where it's kind of acute, like it's, you know, it's not a hot case? Or first let me ask, what's a hot case?
A hot case is something that is happening immediately. Requires us most of the time to go out into the field and begin our investigation immediately.
Okay. In a situation where somebody outcries about some sort of sexual allegation that, you know, the most recent event happened, you know, weeks, months prior, what would you call that type of case?
It's just, it's a regular case that we get assigned. We do things a little bit different. There's not that urgency to get out there right then and there, but we make contact with the victim. Depending on the victim's age, if the victim is minor, we go through their parents. We discuss, you know, how they want to proceed. If it's a child, we tell the parents about a forensic interview, ask them if they're interested. We schedule a forensic interview. Sometimes we schedule them for medical exams. And then we also speak to any witnesses or suspects as well.
What's a forensic interview?
A forensic interview is where a person 17 years or younger goes to a place called Child Safe, where they're interviewed by one person, a one-on-one. And it's a chance for them to tell their story in a non-intimidating way, in more detail, and at their own pace.
Why do you guys use these forensic interviewers for kids?
Sometimes it's easier. You know, it's kind of intimidating if you have them come to where I work headquarters, because we use very small rooms. You know, 4 walls, a table and 2 chairs. And when they go to this place, Child Safe, it's a lot more comfortable. They're a lot more at ease, and it doesn't begin immediately with the interview. The interviewer will, you know, ask them a little bit about themselves and make them comfortable with the whole process before jumping into the reason that they're there.
Are these interviewers police officers?
No, they're not. They're civilians.
So they're not affiliated with law enforcement.
That is correct.
Do you observe these interviews?
Most of the time, not always. Sometimes I schedule them, or sometimes Child Protective Services schedules them. If a detective schedules the interview, then we have to be there sitting in the chair in a different room to observe.
And you know, so you don't interview the kids again, you just rely on the forensic interview.
Correct.
Were you at some point assigned to a case involving a defendant named Isaiah Varju?
Yes.
Do you recall off the top of your head what the date of the initial report was?
Off the top of my head, not the exact date, end of 2020, in November sometime, I believe is when I received the case.
Did you write a report regarding this case?
I wrote yes, a prosecution guide.
Okay, and would looking at your prosecution guide help refresh your memory?
Yes, ma'am.
May I approach John?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit number 3. I'm just gonna flip through this. Would this be your prosecution guide?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and it's the one you created for this case?
Yes.
Okay, so you can go ahead and look at this to refresh your memory, just don't read directly from it, okay?
Okay.
So when did the initial call on this come in?
Let me get this report real quick. So November the 17th, 2020.
Would you, I'm saying, it looks like when you got
I'm
involved.
sorry, the June the 15th, 2020.
Is when she alleged that it happened.
I'm sorry,
That,
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
June the 15th is when you alleged that it happened, or she alleged that it happened.
yes.
So I know you're looking at the report date of November 17th. If you look on the front, does it look like the first reported date is October 19th, 2020? For when they first, not you got involved, but when SAPD first got involved.
Yes, ma'am.
So when a case like this, it's, you know, not a hot case, it's a normal investigation, how long can it take for you as a detective to get involved once the officers take the initial report?
It really just depends. When an officer takes a report, they have to send it through their chain of command for approval. If there are corrections that need to be made, they will send it back. And it could depend on if that officer is off for a few days. It could take that long for them to get back and make the necessary changes. And then they get it to us a week, maybe 2 weeks, just depending on the circumstances.
Okay, so you're not on these cases where you don't go out to the scene, it's patrol starts it and then you get assigned later on?
Yes,
How were things working back in the fall of 2020? Were things slower or were they normal?
they were slower. That was during COVID.
How did COVID affect investigations back then?
Oh, it slowed everything down, from our interviews to being able to reach our, witnesses or suspects, with COVID, everything really slowed down. People were sick a lot, and so we were having to, pause or just delay, the timeframe that we had.
So, they initially reported, this back in October. When did you get involved in the case? When did you get assigned?
I don't have the exact date that I was assigned, but according to my prosecution guide, on October 21st is when I first reached out to the victim's mother.
Okay, so a few days later.
Yes, ma'am.
And then what was your next step after you reached out to her mother?
After I reached out to her mom, I discussed, moving forward and scheduling a forensic interview, which she agreed to.
And how long were forensic interviews taking at that point in terms of scheduling?
They were delayed as well, but I think if I'm looking at my report, we were able to schedule it for the 26th. So
When looking at, you marked, it looks like you scheduled it on the 26th, but it was scheduled.
I'm sorry, for 11/9, yes.
Okay, and then after that, what was your next step?
My next step was to try to make contact with the suspect through certified letter, and then to attend the forensic interview so that I could observe.
And so you observed Ava's interview in this case?
Yes.
When you observe, where were you observing at that time? Kind of describe the setup to the jury.
So during that time during COVID, the interviewer and the victim being interviewed, they were in separate rooms and we were using Zoom. And then I was in a completely separate room. Sometimes we did that from our own office where we watched through Zoom as well.
So you were able to observe the entire interview.
Yes.
And without getting into what she said, did she articulate the elements of an offense?
Yes, she did.
What offenses did she articulate?
Sexual assault of a child?
Did she also articulate indecency with a child?
Yes.
What was your step after that?
After that, I reached out to the suspect and scheduled a time for he and I to sit down so that I could take a statement from him.
And did you, in fact, interview the defendant?
I did.
When did you interview him?
That would have been on November 22nd, 2020.
So over about a month, almost exactly, from when it was first reported.
Yes, ma'am.
At some point also, did you take Ava's phone into custody?
Yes, her mother handed me the phone.
And then she also signed a consent to search, correct?
She did.
When you interviewed Isaiah, oh, sorry, got ahead of myself. What did you do with the phone? Are you a phone examiner?
I'm not. I sent that over to our IT, where they did an extraction of the data.
And they kind of report back to you like, hey, we found the stuff, or how does it work after?
No, they let us know when the phone is ready. They don't necessarily report what they found on the phone. They don't go through them, unless, there's exigent circumstance and we need them to But they're always on hand to help us find what we're looking for.
And did you get to review the contents of the phone?
I did, yes, ma'am.
So without talking about what exactly she said, Ava described that they had text messages on, text messaging, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that what you were looking for?
Yes, ma'am.
And was any of that recovered from the phone?
It was not.
Did that raise any red flags for you? Did you think that, oh, she made it up? What was your response to that?
Honestly, it didn't raise any red flags for me. I just assumed that they were deleted and weren't able to be extracted.
Now, when you interviewed Isaiah in November of 2020, so a month after everything had kind of come out, what was his demeanor?
He was cooperative, answering my questions, he was fine. He didn't give me any, there was no attitude, there was no hesitance to answer my questions.
What was his attitude? What did you say about Ava?
He described her as, a troubled child, often being in trouble and having her phone taken away as punishment. He described the relationship as, like a younger sister.
Did he admit to any of the allegations?
He did not.
Did he, of any reason, what was his explanation for her to make these allegations to begin with?
He believed that, according to her older sister, which is his girlfriend, that she had been communicating with a friend from where she used to live in Canada who was a little bit older, and explained that in Canada at age 18, they had more freedom, and thought that that's why she was acting out, because she wanted to do the things that her older friends were doing. And then that there was some jealousy between her and the sister, and she had wanted to split them up.
Did any of that make sense to you in terms of what Ava had?
No, it was different from what she was saying happened.
Did you confront him about the alleged messages between him and Ava?
I did. I asked him if he had ever exchanged any messages. He said they used a couple of social media sites, Instagram and Snapchat, regular text
Can I have you
messages
slow down, please? Instagram, Snapchat.
and regular text.
Sorry, we just got to make sure we both
Okay.
speak slower for Diana and not talk over each other. She gives me a face. So he admitted that they did text on multiple platforms.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you confront him about the alleged messages he had sent that started this whole thing?
Yes, I let him know that I did have screenshots of the text messages and read them to him, and he said that he was not the one who had sent them.
What was his explanation for them?
He said that Ava often had her phone taken away as punishment. But whenever he was or she was at his home, she had full access to all of his electronics, which he never signed out of. And even if he did, that she would have had the passwords.
Did this sound like something a 15-year-old would have done to frame someone?
Not in my opinion.
Did you ask him if did he say anything unusual about his messages on Snapchat with her or on Instagram with her?
No, he said whenever they messaged, it was about school, that there was never any mention of anything inappropriate, nothing sexual in nature.
Did he say that anything had happened to his messages?
He said that oddly from September and before, all his messages had been deleted.
Did he have any explanation for how these messages had been deleted?
He did not.
At this point, why did you take his cell phone into evidence?
I did not. I already had Ava's cell phone. And being that he told me they had been deleted, I was counting on anything, being left on Ava's phone that would come back from that phone dump.
Had it also been a month since he knew that these allegations were out there?
During the interview, I asked him when he first knew, found out about it. And it was pretty early on when he said his girlfriend had told him that she found the messages. So yes,
Would he have had time to delete anything in that time period?
yes, he would have.
Did you take any steps to try to preserve any evidence from these cell phones?
I sent a preservation letter to Instagram, since that's the media site that they exchange the messages on, and neither account could be found, which means that they were deleted.
And then did you submit a preservation request at all for Snapchat?
I did not for Snapchat. What happens with Snapchat is once those messages are sent, there's a very small window in which the receiver has to read them, and then they disappear.
Are you a cell phone expert?
I am not.
Okay, but this is what you understood, how you understood it to operate.
Yes, ma'am.
After interviewing Isaiah and watching the interview with Ava, did you form an opinion?
I didn't find any reason for her to have made up a story like she did, and talking to him. I mean, everything was pretty corroborated. Like, she stayed there with them, and he had a reason for her maybe making up this story because of some jealousy, and painting her as a troubled child, always in trouble.
So during your time with SVU, have you had cause to interview many defendants who are accused of this?
Yes, I have.
Would you say it's common in your experience for them to try to put blame on the victim?
Yes, it is.
In what ways did they do that?
A lot of them, and it's different, but a lot of them tend to say victim blame, right? It's the victim's fault. They're looking for attention, or they're just a liar. They've always been a liar. Or they come up with some reason, they wanted this to happen, and that's why they're now saying this.
Ask the witness, Your Honor.
Defense.
Good afternoon, Detective. My name is Jessica Gonzalez, and I'm gonna ask you several questions about your investigation, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't understand any of my questions, just let me know and I'll be happy to rephrase, all right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So you stated that you've been a detective for how long with SAPD, specifically with Special Crimes Unit?
Since 2016, specifically with SVU since 2020.
Now, how many cases or investigations have you been involved with that involved social media data?
I couldn't put a number on it.
Okay, are we talking more than 10?
Yes, ma'am, more than 10.
Are you talking more than 50?
In a span of 3.5 years, yes, ma'am.
You're talking more than 100?
I don't know how many exactly. It's possible.
Okay, so let's just be safe and say at least 50 to 100.
Sure.
Now, what sort of platforms are you dealing with when we're talking about social media data?
Are you asking for which
Right, so
sites?
Facebook.
Facebook, Instagram a lot, and Snapchat.
So explain to me what your understanding of Snapchat is.
My understanding of Snapchat is that once a message is sent and viewed by the receiver, in a matter of seconds, the message is deleted.
Okay, and what does the phrase or the word deleted mean to you?
It means that it's gone. Not there anymore.
Okay, have you had any specific training regarding social media?
No, ma'am, I have not.
So how is it that you've learned this information?
Sometimes it's through other detectives who have had similar cases involving Snapchat. And honestly, sometimes through the younger victims who explain that they have exchanged messages through Snapchat. And they'll tell me, we use this because once I send it and they read it, it's gone.
Okay, but you also stated that you are not a computer expert, correct?
That is correct.
But SAPD has a specific unit that is devoted to IT and technology, correct?
Yes,
And you have access to those individuals. So if you ever have questions, you could be able to turn to them and say, hey, this is what my issue is.
in terms of platforms, I don't believe so. But for general questions, when they extract the data, and if I need to know where I need to go to find that data, then I can reach out to them.
Okay, so for in fact, you actually don't do the data extraction. You send that to another unit.
That is correct.
Now, would it surprise you to know that you actually can preserve Snapchat information and data?
Yes,
Would it surprise you to know that after you've preserved this information, you could go and send a subpoena and collect this data and information?
yes,
Would this be helpful in various investigations that you do for San Antonio Police Department?
yes,
Now, because you stated you did not do the forensic interview with Ava, correct?
that is correct.
However, you were there present in the area and watching it.
Correct.
Did you take notes while you were watching it?
I don't recall. Sometimes we do, sometimes we just rely on the DVD. And then we go back to our office when we have more time to watch it and write out our notes.
And that's actually specifically what I was gonna say, is that video is actually that interview is recorded, right?
Yes,
So then you could then go and take that DVD, just like you described, and you could go back and watch it for specific details, right?
yes, ma'am.
Now, the reason that's important is because sometimes a victim, like Ava, will give you very specific information and details in their statement, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And your job as a law enforcement officer is to see if you can confirm, corroborate, or find evidence that goes the other way with those details.
Yes,
Now, specifically, when Ava was describing the relationship between the two and the alleged encounters, she describes that it was in the home, right?
yes, ma'am.
And she stated that there were several people that were in the home, didn't she?
During her interview, I remember the one time, or the second occasion, she mentioned that Isaiah's brother was also present. I don't remember if she said anything about her sister.
Okay, did you ever go and interview Isaiah's brother?
I did not.
Did you ever go and contact anybody that was living in the home?
No, I reached out to her sister, who declined to talk to me.
Circa?
Yes,
Okay, now, and just to refresh, you stated that some of the delays in the investigation were caused by COVID, correct?
correct.
What was going on in Bexar County and San Antonio during COVID during March and April?
I mean, everything was shut down, really.
Businesses,
Businesses,
people were
people were
working?
sick, hospitals were overwhelmed, yes.
Okay, so there was a lot going on, and that shutdown even extended until the time, to some degree, in the fall when you're conducting this investigation, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
People are still wearing masks, right?
Yes, ma'am.
People are still furloughed from jobs.
Yes,
Children were maybe starting to go back to school. I don't remember at that time. Were children going back to school?
I don't recall if they were or not.
But we were still using Zoom a lot, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
People were still mainly sticking in their homes.
Yes,
So going and interviewing somebody like Andrew, Isaiah's brother, or Circa, Ava's sister, who lived in that home, that would have been very crucial in your investigation, wouldn't it? Been?
yes,
Now, she also gave you several other details. She stated that the flirtatious relationship began with her posting a picture.
that is correct.
Did you ever find this picture that she said that she posted?
I did not.
She stated that there were text messages she first stated that Isaiah liked the picture. Then she stated that he then started communicating with her either through messages or texts. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Did you ever find any messaging between the two?
I did, but not about this specific thing that you're asking.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Okay, Detective. I'm gonna hand you three documents. One is gonna be Defendant's Exhibit 3, which has already been admitted into evidence. One is gonna be Defendant's Exhibit 4. Do you recognize Exhibit 4?
But I can barely see it.
Sorry.
That's okay. I can't see anything that says at all. So,
Okay, but
um,
down here, I'm sorry, actually start right here. With this box, the information that's generated in this box.
start. Source. Oh, okay, what is it that you wanted me to see? Isaiah,
Mhm.
okay,
Okay, and then Defendant's Exhibit 5. And then this is gonna be Defendant's Exhibit 2. And all of the contents that are in Defendant's Exhibit 2. But you can just start by looking at this top one right here with this top information.
And just so the record is clear, Defendant's Exhibit number 2 is a box with the contents, correct?
Yes.
All right, defense.
Are you ready, Detective?
yes, do you want me to read all of these?
No,
Okay.
not yet, not yet. Okay, so, and please correct me if I get the numbers wrong, because I really did put them out of order.
Okay,
But Defendant's Exhibit 3 is the consent form, correct?
yes, it is,
Okay, so that's the one that's already been admitted into evidence, right?
yes,
Now, is your signature on that document? Is that gonna be your signature? I think it was like one of the last lines. Did you witness it?
yeah,
Okay, but that is the consent form that you received in the investigation so that you can have the cell phone for Ava extracted and worked on by SAPD, correct?
yes, it is,
Now, I'm a little confused because in your testimony, you stated that Yolanda brought you the cell phone,
yes.
but that's not correct, isn't it? Didn't the officer that made the scene take possession of the cell phone?
I thought that she had given it to me, I could be wrong. I
Okay.
know that she is the one that provided me with the what do you call them, the screenshot, so, I mean, I could be wrong. It was
No, it's
over
okay.
3 years ago.
No worries. That's why you have police reports, right?
Yes,
You just testified, you do hundreds and hundreds of cases. You have to have a police report that's gonna document all this information, so that way you can keep it straight when you come to testify, right?
yes,
Now, in your prosecution guide that the state brought up there to refresh your memory, does it include the original offense report that was taken by the officer that went out to the home?
it is not,
Okay. If at any point in time you need to look at that report, you just let me know, okay?
yes,
Now, so you get the key, you have the cell phone in SAPD property, right?
yes,
and you get the consent to search.
Yes, ma'am.
And so then what do you do after you have the consent to search all finalized?
I submit a request to our IT department and then I've been mailed it to them.
Now, at this point in time, do you go into the cell phone and delete anything?
I do not.
Do you mess with anything in the cell
I
phone?
do not.
Do you, to the best of your knowledge, did you even turn the cell phone on?
No.
So you send it over to IT. Do you know what the process is for IT?
I do not.
Now, do you remember when it was that you got the cell phone back from IT?
I do not. But
I think the date's in your report, your prosecution guide.
on December the 16th.
So you get the report back on December the 16th. The report, the beginning of the report, what defense exhibit is that? Is that 5?
For the forensic report, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, is that the report that you review for the cell phone extraction?
Yes, and then we also have access to, the Cellbrite, like website that we can go to and we're able to see, look through photos and whatever messages were able to be extracted.
Okay, so how familiar are you with Cellbrite?
Not very. If I have any questions, I always reach out to the, IT guys.
The IT guys?
Yes.
Okay, can you try to explain Cellbrite, just generally speaking to the jury so that they at least know what we're talking about?
I can tell you that it's a program that our department uses to extract data. And that's all the knowledge that I have on that.
Okay, so when you receive this report back, we'll call it the cell phone dump. That's what we refer to it as.
Yes,
right? Okay, so when you receive the dump back, you go and look through that using the website for Cellbrite.
yes,
And in this case, did you do that with Ava's cell phone?
I did.
And in this case, when you did that, you didn't find any of the sexual nature flirtatious conversations that Ava described in her forensic interview, did you?
I did not.
Okay. I believe it's gonna be Defense Exhibit 4. Is that a printout of text messages?
Yes,
Okay. Did you review those text messages when you reviewed the Cellbrite report for the dump?
these don't look, familiar to me. They do not.
There's several pages. And then, so when you're looking at the report, there's actually, before the beginning of all of them, there's a little grayer box and it'll describe some of the data, correct? It'll have the phone numbers that are communicating.
Yes,
Okay. And do you recognize either one of those phone numbers?
I do not.
Okay. Now, in those messages, there's no sexual nature communications, is there?
In these that you just handed me, I have not read them all. I
You
don't.
can go ahead and look. Or if it refreshes your memory, it's the cell messages or the messages between Isaiah
I'm
and,
gonna object. She's testifying about something that's not been offered or admitted into evidence at this point, Your Honor.
All right, that objection will be sustained. But you may review the
but
document.
you can review.
All right, defense.
Now, reading through those, does that familiarize you with what you learned in your investigation? Did you read those during your investigation?
I don't recall reading any of those.
Okay. Um. But, so in reading those, was there any conversations or a flirtatious nature or
I
sexual
mean, I again
comment?
object, but this is evidence that's not admitted.
I'm just asking about in your investigation, when you did your
All right.
investigation,
Ask your question.
when you did your investigation, you looked at the Cellbrite report and extraction, correct?
Yes,
And you never found conversations, whether or not it's text messaging or, I'm sorry, text or messaging of a sexual or flirtatious nature between Isaiah and Ava.
I did not.
Now, also in your investigation, you found and contacted Isaiah, correct?
Yes,
You brought him down for an interview with you, correct?
correct.
Approximately how long was that interview?
I don't recall.
About 45 minutes to an hour?
Possible, 30 minutes to an hour.
Now, during that conversation, you said on direct, he never made any admissions to you.
That is correct.
And in fact, he denied everything.
That is correct.
At that time, when you did the interview, did he have his cell phone with him?
I don't recall.
Do you remember seeing him pull out his cell phone?
I do not.
Did you even ask him if he had his cell phone?
I don't believe I did.
You know, as a detective, you can ask somebody if they have their cell phone.
Yes,
And in fact, you could have asked him for permission to go into his cell phone.
yes,
And then to take it another step further, if you felt that you had enough evidence, you could have requested a subpoena or a warrant from a judge and took custody of Isaiah's cell phone.
yes.
But you never did that in this case.
I did not.
And did you ever get his information for his Instagram account?
I don't know that I got it from him. And honestly, I'm not sure if I got it from Ava's mother. I don't-
Did you confirm it with him?
I did not.
You could have confirmed his Instagram information, correct?
Yes, I could have.
And you could have done that for all the other social media platforms like Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, anything. You could have confirmed that with Isaiah,
That is correct.
but you did not do
I
it.
did not.
Now, you stated that you were concerned because you didn't go further, I believe you said. Because when you sent the preservation letters to Facebook, they stated there was no accounts, correct?
That is correct. It said that the Instagram accounts that I was looking for were inactive.
Okay, did you know that Instagram accounts could be reactivated as long as it was done within 30 days?
I did not.
Would that information have been helpful for you during your investigation?
I say, yeah, I could have submitted another preservation letter.
You could have collected a whole bunch of evidence in this case, correct?
If I would have known that, they could be reactivated, yes.
Okay, and then not only that, but with the information or the property that was taken into SAPD custody, so you did collect and do some of an investigation. None of the information that Ava was saying was verified on that property, was it?
That is correct.
But you're saying that that didn't cause a red flag for you
It did not.
at that time, or does it cause a red flag for you now?
It does not.
Oh, you know what, let me ask you this. So you said that you called Circa, right?
I don't, if I talked to her directly or if I went through mom, I know I had trouble getting a phone number for her, but mom let me know that she had told her under no circumstances would she be cooperating to talk to me.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Detective, I'm handing you what's previously been marked as State's Exhibit 2. Can you go ahead and take a look at that? Yes. Now, on page 5 of State's Exhibit 2, at the very bottom, focusing specifically on the very bottom, and then on the right-hand side. Mhm. So this bar right there and that one on the side.
Okay.
Okay. Detective, in reviewing State's Exhibit 2, the State's Exhibit 2 appear to be pictures of a computer screen. Do you need to look at it
The
again?
bars that you were talking about, I mean, it looks like maybe the phone was sitting up against a computer. It could be.
Okay, so it appears that those pictures are taken by a phone that is looking at a computer screen.
Those pictures are taken with a phone of another phone that's possibly sitting up against a computer screen, yes.
Okay. Now, with that in mind, the information that is in those pictures, it's fair to say, could be gotten from a computer,
I couldn't say.
or it could have been received from another device.
That's possible.
Did you ever go and execute a search warrant for another device?
I did not.
Did you ever collect another device?
I did not.
Did you ever go and attempt to get the computer that this information was on?
I did not.
Never did a search warrant, never collected it, and you never did an extraction on that cell phone, I'm sorry, that computer for that data, correct?
I did not. That is correct.
But these are all things that you as an SAPD detective could have done.
Yes,
And all of these things may have helped Ava's case and corroborated her case, correct?
they could have.
It also could have hurt her case, correct?
That's possible.
Because if the information's there, then the story she's telling is not true, correct?
Again, if the information, I don't understand your question.
If she's saying that there's text messages and communication between the two, and all of the devices are searched and it is not found, that means that she's lying.
I wouldn't say that.
I'll pass the witness here.
State.
Just a few, Your Honor. The defense asked you about, shouldn't you have, interviewed the brother or the sister because these were people in the home, correct?
Correct.
In your experience as a detective in SVU, are people sometimes home when sexual offenses occur?
They are not.
No, I mean, are other people around but not witnessing it?
That is correct.
Okay. In your experience, and in other investigations, have there been other instances where a child has been sexually assaulted or abused and someone was in the other room but just didn't hear it?
Yes,
So it's possible that it happens.
it is.
Was there any reason for you to think that was no way that could possibly happen.
No,
Now there's, talk about, tax, on different platforms. In your experience, do people, especially teenagers, do they always just message on one app or do they use multiple
they
apps?
use multiple apps.
Do they use multiple apps on the same people?
Yes,
In your experience, why is that?
I have no clue.
Teenagers.
Yes.
Um, defense also asked you, and made a deal that you could have asked Isaiah for his cell phone, correct?
That is correct.
But you could have gotten his stuff for Instagram, correct?
I could have.
But he had already told you, oh, everything magically before September disappeared.
Yes.
Did you think there was any point in getting it at that point?
No, I did not. Excuse me.
You also were asking why you didn't go and get Circus Computer, correct?
Correct.
At that point, had both Ava and Isaiah claimed to have these messages would have been deleted anyways.
Yes.
Would there have been any point in your mind at that point?
In my mind, I had one, and again, I was hopeful that what I needed, the messages that were being talked about would be on that one device.
Okay. And you also had these screenshots that were allegedly between Ava and Isaiah,
I
correct?
did.
Did you confront him about those during your interview?
I did.
Did he acknowledge that he knew they existed?
He said he knew they existed because his girlfriend at the time told him, but he denied sending those messages to her.
And defense has already shown you State's Exhibit 2, which is purports to be these.
Yes,
And were these, when you reviewed them, were these what you received and confronted Isaiah about?
yes, there's some even in my report that I didn't see there.
Okay. You're right. At this time, we're gonna once again offer State's Exhibit 2.
All right, that will be sustained.
Was there,
The state's exhibit number 2.
was there? no-
I have objections. Do you want us to come up with them?
Well, I was just saying she hadn't
And do
objected
you-
yet.
Your previous objections?
Previous objections.
All right, that will be sustained.
That's the witness, Your Honor.
Detective, you keep using the word disappears when you're referring to text messages in the Instagram account,
Okay,
but things don't disappear. It's still preserved in the accounts for Instagram and Meta. That's why you sent them preservation letters, correct?
yes,
That is why you can serve, which you just learned today, that you can send Snapchat the preservation letter and get a subpoena, and you can get the records from these places, correct?
yes,
And that same process is true. I explained it to you for Snapchat, which you said you didn't know, but that's also true for Instagram, correct?
yes,
Because nothing on the internet or nothing that we're doing is gone forever. There is always a way to recover it. Correct?
I object to lack of knowledge and expertise.
If you know, that may
All
be a
right, so
question for-
stop. So I need to make a ruling when an objection is raised.
Sorry.
All right. If you know the answer to the question, you may answer. If you do not know, then let them know you do not know.
I'm just going to ask me one more time.
Yes. Nothing is gone forever, correct?
I don't have that knowledge. I'm not tech savvy. I don't know that it's not gone forever or that it can be retrieved.
Okay, and because that's as a detective, that's sometimes the purpose of a Cellbrite extraction, a phone dump. So that experts can go and look into that device and see if information can be pulled from it when somebody has deleted it. That's
Yes.
one of the purposes.
Yes,
And in fact, if you can take a look at Defense Exhibit 5, is that the Cellbrite report?
yes,
That's the Cellbrite report you reviewed in your investigation?
yes,
Now, this Cellbrite report may end up containing information on whether or not something is deleted and whether or not something can be recovered, correct?
yes,
The whole purpose of Cellbrite and that's the whole purpose of Cellbrite and the program, correct?
yes,
Now, have you ever heard of individuals faking accounts? Faking
Yeah.
Instagram accounts?
Yeah, I have heard of it, yes,
You've heard of fake news, right?
yes,
So there are things that we need to be able to look for to be able to determine if something is true or fake, correct?
correct.
And that would be the data in the Cellbrite report.
To my knowledge, this will only cover like text messages, but not like social media platforms.
Okay. So, but let me rephrase that. So that would be the purpose of the experts to be able to explain this information.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
No further questions.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse from the state, Your Honor.
Subject to recall, Your Honor.
All right. Either party may call you back for more testimony. Just make sure you're available. All right.
I just leave all this stuff.
Yes, please. And if we will, defense? If you'll put your items back in the box.
Yes. Your Honor.
Okay.
Do we want to take a break?
No, state, we need to see if the state has another witness.
State restaurant.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna give you a brief break. We'll be back here at 4:15. Remember my rules? Everything that you need to know about this case. All right, everyone, please rise. All right, everyone, please be seated. The state has rested. Defense, do you have any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense called David Gallant.
All right. Right, could you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand, have a seat, please. Make sure you keep your voice up for the jurors and the court reporter. If you could state your name for the record.
David Gallant.
All right. Defense.
Thank you, David. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your last name. Can you please turn and introduce yourself to the jury?
Sure. My name is David Gallant. I own and operate my company, Gallant Computer Investigative Services. I provide digital forensics services and consulting to, essentially attorneys and judges around the state of Texas and some other locations.
Now, when you say attorneys, do you specifically work for defense or do you answer questions for everybody?
Oh, for anybody. Most of my work is for defense, simply because the state has their experts that they're already paying, so they don't need to pay me in most cases. But there have been a few occasions where, in certain circumstances, they needed somebody outside of the law enforcement world to assist them in a prosecution.
Now, can you please describe to the jury what is your general background of your education?
Sure. I went in the Air Force right out of high school. Spent 20 years in the Air Force. I was initially a medic, and then about 5 or 6 years into my service, I cross-trained into what's called the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. You may have heard it referred to as OSI.
Excuse me. Need you to slow down. All right. Thank you.
So for about 8 years or so as an agent, and we were credentialed federal agents, I conducted all types of investigations: crimes against persons, child abuse, sexual assaults, deaths, basically the whole gamut. The last 5 years, I specialized in computer crime investigations, and that started in 1995, where I got my first training for digital forensics, which was at that time was in its infancy. So I was fortunate to be introduced into that world right as it was really starting to grow. And I spent the rest of my 5 years or so in the Air Force running computer hacker investigations, various types, basically any type of investigation that involved a computer. I was the branch chief here at Randolph for a 4-person office, and we were responsible for anything computer related in between a 4 and 7 state region, depending on the time frame, where we would go out and assist other agents or train other agents on how to handle digital evidence.
Now, let me ask you this. Well, actually, let me ask you this, if you don't mind my asking. How old are you?
I just turned 62.
Okay. So how many years would you say that you have in familiarity with computers and computer science?
Well, I've always had an interest. Keep in mind, in 1985 or so, computers aren't what they are now by any means, but I always had an aptitude and an interest in computers. So even early on in my Air Force career as a medic and then as a street investigator, still took an active interest in the computers. But officially, my training started in 1995 for computers. My credentialing to be an investigator was 1987. So I've been an investigator for over 35 years.
Now, you also just stated computers are not, the computers we have now and the devices we have now, that's not the same as what we had in the 80s, right?
No.
Have you had additional training to be able to keep up with the latest technology?
Yes, training is ongoing and constant. In fact, for about 10 years, I was a contract instructor for one of the leading computer forensic software programs. I started when cell phones started becoming the preferred method of people communicating online, then obviously the industry kind of went into that direction as well. And so I got in on the early stages of the digital forensic, mobile device forensics industry.
Okay, did you get a specific certificate for that?
I've had multiple. My current certification is the Celebrate Advanced Smartphone Analyst certification.
And what year did you get that?
I think yeah, that was last year I got that one.
So you actually have several certificates that have to do with forensic science or forensic experience.
Yes.
How many hours would you say that you have under your belt for the training?
It must be thousands. I don't know. I don't keep track of it, but it's a constant thing. The average course that you take is 4 full days, and I've taken a multitude of courses.
So please describe just some of the general work that you or someone in this field would conduct when you're asked to give your opinion or review materials. What would you guys do?
Sure. Typically what I do is whatever the state or the federal government is using as evidence in a defense case, whatever they're using as evidence, I obtain a copy of exactly what they took for evidence. And then I review the facts of the case. I'll do my own independent analysis and see if the information that is being presented by the prosecutors in this case matches up with what's on the phones. As you heard, with the last witness, the street detectives don't typically have a lot of experience and training with the digital world. So there is room for some issues to be overlooked. And that's one of the things that I look for.
So, and that is why, like the detective talked about, she has an IT department to go to be able to answer questions and what should be done on a case.
Yeah, it's actually more than an IT department. It's people with digital forensics training like me. These are detectives as well and sergeants within the SAPD. So they're not the IT guys that are running their network. These are trained analysts like I am.
Okay. Have you ever worked with someone on a case
Oh, all the time. All the time.
frequently?
Frequently, weekly, almost monthly.
All right. So, when you get onto a case, what are the things that are involved? You said that you take the report, you review that, and then you do your own investigation.
Correct.
What does that entail?
Well, it depends. Everything is case specific. So, in this case, we're talking about social media communications, and other various types of communication. So that'd be the primary focus in a case like this. But other cases, you go down different trails. It might be a internet history that's important, or it might be search terms that somebody is using that might be important. Deleted information, what's deleted and recoverable, that's important.
Now, when you said that you worked with these other agencies, have you ever had to write reports concerning the investigations you've done
As a defense expert,
as defense?
typically I don't write a report. I will send an email, a detailed email to the attorney of my findings, concerns, questions I may have. I oftentimes will ask for input from the attorneys as to what other types of things can I search for, other names, date ranges, locations. So there's a collaborative effort between myself and the attorneys on the defense cases.
Now, have you ever testified in the area of cell phone digital forensic analysis?
Yes, many times, yes.
Approximately how many?
20 plus. I don't know. I don't keep track.
Have you ever been recognized as an expert in this field by any of the courts in the state of Texas?
Yes.
Here in Bexar County?
Here in Bexar County, yes.
What about in federal courts?
Yes.
What is forensic data examination?
Well, the analysis of data is a process we use to properly preserve, process, and analyze data that's extracted from a cell phone or a tablet or a computer. We use different terminologies for computers. But so there's a methodology that has to be followed to get to the point where you're actually looking at evidence, able to interpret its meaning in a particular instance, and then be able to convey that meaning to lay people so that they understand.
Now, can you briefly explain that methodology process?
Sure. You've heard the term Celebrate used. Celebrate is the big daddy in the world for the world of digital forensics. It's an Israeli-owned company, and their product is used worldwide by law enforcement of all levels, state, local, and federal, as well as intelligence agencies all over the world. That's one tool that we use. That's the one that's primarily used in this case because that's the tool that the state used in this case. So like I said, I take the extraction taken by the state, I process it with one of the Celebrate tools, and that processing goes in and it analyzes the data on the phone, which a lot of it, especially on an iPhone, is stored in databases, relatively small databases on the phone. And then what it does is it quote decodes that data, meaning Celebrate can look at a certain database, like your text messaging database, and it knows what the structure is. So it can go into that and decode that data and put it in a more user-friendly view for people like a detective that's not experienced in looking it through and doing database analysis.
Now, were you retained by Isaiah for this case, or were you appointed by the court for your
I
work?
believe I was appointed, if I remember correctly.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to offer this witness as an expert witness.
State.
Now, you reviewed the evidence in this case, correct?
Correct.
How is it that you got to the evidence?
But once I learned that it was a San Antonio police extraction, like I said, I've worked with the folks over in their digital forensics section and went through the attorneys and contacted them and was able to get a copy of the original evidence from a detective over in their forensics branch.
Now, with this evidence in particular, do you remember that there was a bit of a problem trying to get the full Cellbrite extraction to you?
Yes, there typically is.
Okay, why is that?
Well, the attorneys are provided with a version of the software that the detective alluded to. She referred to it as looking at the Celebrate on the web. That's not quite accurate. It may appear to her that she's looking at it on the web, but there's actually a companion program that goes with the Celebrate software that the detectives can export data from the full, very, very pricey Celebrate program and put it into a free reader program that has some limited functionality compared to the full reader. And so the attorneys in their mind think, oh, we gave you the full dump. And I always say, no, go talk to your tech guys. They'll tell you this is not the full dump. So I have that dance with the attorneys almost every case.
Okay, but in this particular case, even though we have this little bit of a dance, did you eventually get to the full Cellbrite report?
Full Celebrate extraction.
Sorry, full Cellbrite extraction. And
Yeah.
please forgive me if I ever mess up any terms and feel free to correct me,
That's
okay?
okay.
All right, so did you eventually have to go down to SAPD headquarters to be able to do this and get this?
Yes.
Okay, and when you received that information, what did you do?
I brought it back to my office and did the processing of it.
Okay, and what did you do for that process?
I use Celebrate. It's called Physical Analyzer. There's two programs that are part of what we refer to as Celebrate. So I use the Celebrate Physical Analyzer to decode and process the evidence.
Now, do you have a copy of that full Cellbrite extraction with you?
I do.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
It's on the
6.
desk.
6.
It's on the desk.
You may want to place that in an envelope,
Envelope?
and then mark the envelope. Because, oh, we will see. Is there an envelope in the back?
Envelope?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. You rock.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Now, sir, I'm handing you what has just been marked on the envelope that we just received as Defense Exhibit 6. Have you had an opportunity to go through Defense Exhibit 6?
I have,
You've reviewed this in its entirety to the best of your knowledge?
yes,
Okay, and where is it that you got Defense Exhibit 6?
from San Antonio Police Department.
Now, do you know what Defense Exhibit 6, without going into detail, what Defense Exhibit 6 is of?
Yes,
Now, you reviewed it, and did you use this as part of your investigation?
yes,
And did you make that thumb drive of Defense Exhibit 6?
yes,
Was it made by a device that was working properly?
yes.
Your Honor, I'll offer Defense Exhibit 6 into evidence.
And I'm gonna object on a few grounds. One would be relevance. It's not needed for his testimony. He could talk about the review he did. And that phone also contains multitudes of hearsay, Your Honor, and it is not, at this time, the state feels appropriate to admit the entire cell phone.
All right. Defense?
Yes, Your Honor. This is evidence that was received, as this witness just stated, from San Antonio Police Department, which was a part of the custody of the cell phone that was taken of the complaining witness. It is entirely relevant to this matter. As far as any hearsay, it is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. However, it's being offered just to show what information was on Ms. Scott's phone.
All right, with regards to Defense Exhibit 6, specifically what it is and where it came from, the foundation needs to be laid as far as what it is and where it came from.
I'm so sorry. Now, officer, when you reviewed Defense Exhibit 6, what was this cell right extraction of?
The complaining witness's iPhone 6.
Okay, and how is it that you know that it's the complaining witness's iPhone 6?
There's identifying data. First off, I was informed that by SAPD. And then there's also data on there that's associated with that individual.
So for instance, are there pictures of the complaining witness on that you saw when you, I'm sorry, the complaining witness, you saw her in court this week, correct?
Yes,
And does the person that identified themselves as the complaining witness, does that match with the pictures that and the information you found on State Defense Exhibit 6?
yes, that as well as an email address. It was either Scott Ava or avascott@gmail.com.
Furthermore, on the text exchange, is her cell phone number used as the sender or recipient of the messages that are on there?
Yes,
So those would be the identifiers of Ava Scott, correct?
correct.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd re-offer this with the proper predicate.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have you all step out. And I'm going to have you all come back in 15 minutes. Remember the court's previous instruction. Everything you need to know about this case is to come from. All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors.
I'm here, Judge.
Oh, there you are.
She's ready.
Ready.
All right, for the jury?
Everyone, please see. All right, defense, I believe you had previously sought to enter defense exhibit number 6. Are you withdrawing that?
Yes, at this time, yes, Your Honor.
Then states exhibit defense exhibit number 6 is withdrawn. Right, defense?
Yes, Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
All right, sir. I'm gonna hand you defendants exhibits 5. You can take a look at them. 4. And then defendants exhibit 2, which is this box, and then all of the contents that are in this box. Just glancing at it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, sir, I'm gonna ask you some questions about these exhibits. These exhibits at this point in time are there to refresh your memory about the investigation you did concerning the iPhone 6 from Ava. Do not read directly from these exhibits. However, you can refer to them, read it, see if it refreshes your memory, and then look up and answer any questions, okay?
Understand.
Now, you stated that you did, you went to SAPD headquarters and you pulled the full Cellbrite extraction report, correct?
Data, not the report.
Sorry, data. So,
Correct.
so let's go ahead and explain this. What's the difference between the data and the report?
The reports are produced from the data. The data is unintelligible without using physical examiner and then producing some sort of an output that's human readable.
So once you got that data, then a report is generated, correct?
Correct.
And then is that defense exhibit 5? That's what they're with you.
Defense Exhibit 5 is actually a report that was created by San Antonio Police Department.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So what kind of information is in defense exhibit 5?
It's very limited. It references the various social media accounts, the number of items that were recovered and included in this, the remaining portion of this report, and how many of those were deleted and recovered.
Now you stated that it's a very limited report, correct?
Correct.
Is that why you insisted on going down to San Antonio Police Department to actually view the data?
Yes, because I don't, when they create a report, you got to keep in mind that a phone may have 500,000 data items on it. And they create a report of what they believe is responsive to their customers' needs, or the detective in this case, and the prosecutors. So they're not necessarily looking for something that the defense might look for. They're looking for it from the prosecution side.
Now, what about, you know that there was data that, or a disk or a drive that was given to you with files that it purported to be the full Cellbrite report. But when you looked at it, you determined it was not everything, correct?
Correct.
So now that you went and did this, did you get a chance to look at all of the data on Ava's cell phone?
Yes.
When you looked at all of the data on her cell phone, do you remember the various social media accounts that she had on there?
Yes.
What are some of the examples of what she had on her phone?
The typical ones you would find, social, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook are the ones that are pop out the quickest to me.
I'm sorry, did you say, you said Instagram?
Instagram, yes.
Okay. And is there a difference between Instagram messaging and Instagram itself?
Well, you can message within Instagram. They
Okay,
call it DMs. So I can DM you if we're both connected on Instagram. I can also see the feed, my Instagram feed, which are interests that I have chosen that I want to see, or the algorithm thinks that I want to see.
okay. Is the same true for the social media Facebook?
It's very similar, except Facebook is more an interactive, publicly interactive type application. So I post a picture of, a trip that I did, then people can comment on it or like it, or whatever they want to do. So there are different ways you can interact based on the application.
Okay, and how do individuals interact on TikTok?
TikTok is a feed. Now you can post on TikTok. You can generate your own TikToks, but generally speaking, people go on TikTok and they see these short little videos that somebody else has created that, once again, you either connect with the person who's doing it, the influencer who is doing it, or once again, an algorithm say, well, you might want to see this. You looked at this DIY on how to build a shed. So now you're going to start getting all kinds of DIY stuff on how to build a shed.
And lastly, let's talk a lot about Snapchat. What is Snapchat?
Snapchat has evolved over the years. It started out as a social media application that primarily teenagers used. And the design of it was so that they could send a picture or send a snap, they refer to it as, to another individual, and it stays there for a very limited amount of time. So and there's some encryption involved in point-to-point from the phone, between the phone and the receiver, and it all goes through the Snapchat server. So it's a more secretive way for people to communicate, and you can also DM through Snapchat as well.
Okay, now, is it true that once the snap is gone, it's gone forever?
It depends on how the snap is created.
Okay,
So if I take a picture of myself or whatever I want to snap, and then once you take that picture, you can edit over it, you can put emojis on it, you can put little banners on it that say different things, and then I send it, then yes, the snap portion of that will likely be deleted unless one of the recipients saves it. But on the device itself, we have varying degrees of success in recovering the actual snap, but the original picture that was taken to create the snap is still on the phone. And communications, the DMs, we oftentimes are able to extract the DMs from the snaps.
so you said a couple of things. You said extract, and you said oftentimes and sometimes. Is there a timeline for how quickly things can be recovered?
Well, that's a kind of a application by application, phone by phone, operating system by operating system answer. So when something is deleted on an iPhone, and we're talking about an iPhone 6 in this case, depending on the version of the operating system and depending on what the application was, when you delete something, according to Apple and according to Cellbrate's experts, it's gone and not recoverable. I found that to be not completely true. Sometimes we can recover things that we shouldn't have, according to the experts, been able to recover. But other applications that are not Apple-specific applications have different latency periods. And something is deleted from, let's say, a text message, you delete a text message. Keep in mind that text message is actually in a database, and Celebrate decoded that database and brought that into a human readable form for the end user. Either on the phone or within Celebrate. But when you actually do it you delete it on the phone, the data is not immediately deleted from the database. That data is just marked for deletion. And eventually, and the eventually is, we don't know exactly when, because there's really no way for us to determine it, but eventually that data is overwritten. Once the data is overwritten, it cannot be recovered, at least not in its entirety. Sometimes we get little scraps of data that we can't really put into full context, but we can see certain parts of the data.
But when you say overwritten, that requires information to come in to overwrite the deleted information, correct?
Not necessarily, not in the case of iPhone, or not in the case of cell phones. No, it's a different technology than a
Okay.
traditional
I'm
computer.
sorry, can you please slow down and do not talk over each other?
Okay, so when something is deleted, in this particular case, you've been sitting here in the courtroom this entire time, correct?
Correct,
You have listened to all of the witnesses that have testified, right?
correct.
What was the purpose of that?
Purpose of it was to basically find out if the investigation sought all the data that was reasonably available at the time the allegation was made to either confirm or refute the allegation.
And was it also to be able to assist me if I had any technological questions as the testimony was happening?
Yes,
Is that actually something very important that you do in your job?
yes, it is.
Now, we were talking about the deleted information, particularly with Ava's cell phone, an iPhone 6. And it is the iPhone 6 data that you reviewed in your extraction, correct?
Correct.
Now, with that, did you find any deleted information? I'm sorry, did you find any notation that there'd been information deleted?
We always find deleted information during the course. People delete stuff on their phones routinely.
Did you find specifically any information regarding deleted flirtatious text messages between Isaiah and Ava?
I found nothing that resembles that.
Did you actually find any text messaging between Ava and Isaiah?
Yes,
Was in those messages that you reviewed, was there anything close to a sexual nature or flirtatious nature between these text messages?
nothing at all.
Now, did you also find messaging of her conversing with a person named Aiden?
I did.
How is it that you identify that these were conversations between Aiden and Ava?
Several steps. So I searched for various spellings of the name Aiden. I was able to find a phone number linked to a contact referred to, that in one text was referred to Aiden, and then in another one, the name in her contacts for that number was Baby. So then once I identified Baby as the person she's communicating with, then I can search for any communications with Baby.
Okay, and is the majority of those text messages found in Defense Exhibit 2, that box that's in front of you?
Yes,
When you did this search and you did your investigation, approximately how many text messages did you find between Ava and Aiden without going into what they're discussing?
I'm gonna object at this point to relevance, Your Honor.
Right, that'll be overruled.
You can answer.
3,545 messages between June 14th, 2020, and I believe October 19th. I believe it was the day the phone was taken from her.
And that's just one person, correct?
That's directly between the two of them.
The two, so one contact line of communication, right?
Correct.
That doesn't include any of the Google Duo video and telephone calls that she was talking about?
No,
That doesn't include any of the Insta messaging that she was describing,
no,
or Snapchat or TikTok or anything like that.
no.
That was just the text messages between the two.
These were iMessage chats.
I'm not an expert in this. Is that a normal amount of text messaging communications from what you do in your investigations, or is that a high number?
It depends on the teenagers text like crazy. They don't talk on the phone, they text. So it's not unusual to see large numbers of texts on teenage phones.
And you said this didn't happen in just one day. It was in a time period, correct?
Correct.
And I'm sorry, can you repeat the time period?
I believe it's June 14th, 2020 to October 19th, the date, whatever the date was that the phone was taken from her.
Okay, October 19th, correct?
I believe so.
Now, you said that you've worked alongside SAPD on other cases, correct?
Not really alongside them. We collaborate on getting evidence and different things, but
But you're familiar with SAPD, right?
yes,
Do they do anything to manipulate the information and data in a cell phone or any property that they take custody of?
I've never seen any instance of that, no.
Okay, that would not be good, right?
Well, not only would it not be good, it would be impossible on a cell phone extraction, the way the data is preserved by Celebrite when it's extracted. It's assigned a certain value that is a calculation of the data, and then when that data is loaded into Physical Analyzer for the analysis, if it's corrupted, it'll tell the analyst that there's a problem.
Okay. And in your investigation, you never found that anything was corrupted, correct?
Never.
You were talking about the fact that you also were here to be able to explain what it was that this SAPD officer, Detective Mendez, I believe, what it was that she did not do in her investigation. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Any investigation involving data, digital data, is a very complex investigation. Typically, detectives or agents with specialized training run these investigations, or a detective can get the specialized training to understand the world of digital data. So I don't fault a street detective for not understanding the nuances of obtaining data from social media sites or the cloud or anything like that. But in this case, there were a lot of opportunities for additional evidence or data to be obtained for analysis to determine the truthfulness or the untruthfulness of the initial allegation.
Now, State's Exhibit 2, have you reviewed State's Exhibit 2? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say State's Exhibit 2?
Not off the top of my head, no.
May I approach you on?
Yes.
Can I move this? Yes, I'm familiar with this.
Okay. Now, before this trial, when we were doing your investigation, did I give you a copy of State's Exhibit 2?
Yes, that was the first document that you sent to me.
Okay, so even though you just glanced at it, you know what State's Exhibit 2 is, correct?
Correct.
State's Exhibit 2 could not be verified in Ava's her cell phone, correct?
Correct.
Is that one of the problems you had with State's Exhibit 2?
That's one of the problems, yes.
What are some of the other problems you had?
Well, the other problem is, and the detective talked briefly about it, is obtaining data from the social media sites. The federal law requires these sites to cooperate with law enforcement in matters like this. And there's been some very easy, compared to when I started doing this type of work, it's now very easy to initially preserve evidence on a social media site. In my opinion, as soon as whoever the detective was, when the detective was assigned to this case and heard the stories involving that exhibit, they should have immediately sent a preservation request to Instagram. And I would even blanket it further. I would have gone to other social media sites like Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram are kind of together. They're the same company now. So I would have sent a preservation letter to any of the social media sites that were referenced in the initial complaint.
And you referenced the federal law. Had the detective done this, those companies are obligated by law to be able to preserve that so it could later be collected as evidence, correct?
Correct. You send the preservation letter. They, at that point, immediately have to preserve everything that they have in their files related to that account. And then within 90 days, you have to follow up with a search warrant or a court order or some sort of a legal capability to get them to turn that data over. And then during that period of time, from the time they received the preservation letter until the date that they received the search warrant, they continue to collect on that account and turn it all over.
Is it possible for a person to fake communications between two individuals?
Oh, absolutely.
How so?
Well, you can create fake accounts that appear to look like each other. You can Google, how do I fake Instagram DMs? And I did it today just to see what the results would be. And I think I came up with 2 solid pages of click on this to learn how to do it. So there are definitely capabilities to masquerade as somebody else in all the social media.
So it's not just Insta, it can be done on any one of the messaging apps, correct?
Yeah, I routinely get phone calls from potential clients to say, hey, somebody hacked my Facebook account or somebody hacked my Snapchat account or whatever. How do we prove it, who that person is?
And that's actually just another way that you brought up, is that somebody's accounts could be hacked, correct?
Yeah, or if somebody knows the credentials, the user ID and the password, if somebody shared it with them, then technically it's probably not really a hack by the legal sense because they provided that information to them voluntarily. But if I have access to Jessica's Instagram account and whatever I send out looks like it's coming from Jessica.
I'll pass the witness.
State.
Thank you. Just a few questions. Mr. Gallant?
Nope.
How would you say it?
Gallant.
Gallant. Okay, I knew it wasn't gallant, gallant.
Nobody gets it right.
I know, I'm sorry. So just a few clarifications on a few points. So you make your living testifying and running your company, correct?
Yeah, testifying is one aspect of it, yes.
And just to be clear, so it's out there, you were paid to testify.
Yes.
Okay. Now, during your time using Cellbrite specifically, but just in general in the world of cell phone extractions, has technology changed and advanced over time?
Absolutely.
And even as quickly as 1 year, can maybe 1 year you get X amount of things from a cell phone dump, but then you run the dump again like a year later, and maybe, hey, now I'm finding all the stuff I didn't find a year later. Is that possible?
You mean the extraction and decoding capabilities improve. So if I've got a phone that I took in 2020 and I extracted the data and processed the data in 2020, and I took that same phone with today's technology and extracted the data and processed it, then typically I would find additional information that wasn't found before.
Okay. And so that's just kind of common in the nature of cell phone data extraction, especially with iPhones, correct?
Yeah, they're all the same.
Okay. But technology has advanced at this point.
Sure.
When were you hired or appointed on this case?
I believe it was, I think it was in July, this last July.
Of 2023?
I believe so.
Okay. And then just to be clear, the extraction and data that you examined was the stuff that was taken in 2020. You didn't perform a new extraction, correct?
Correct.
If something is not preserved, this is kind of like a general question. If something is not preserved, like they don't file like a Facebook request to preserve, and somebody, has deleted their account, they've deleted the app from their phone. If it's not preserved, is it possible that it's gone, or would you think that you would still be able to recover it from a phone?
From the phone,
Mhm.
it depends on the app. as to when it was deleted, how long occurred, what time passed between the deletion and the extraction, what type of extraction we were able to get. There are various levels of the depth of extractions that we can get based on the phone and the operating system on the phone. So an older phone like an iPhone 6, at that point, we could only get to so deep. But now if I had that iPhone with the software and the capabilities I have, I could get exponentially more information off that device.
Okay. And so you had also said that there's varying degrees of success in recovering deleted data. You can't always recover stuff that's been deleted. It just depends. It's the basic answer.
Well, yeah, my favorite line that I use weekly is, data forensics is not like you see on TV. Things can be deleted and completely deleted and not recovered by any capabilities anybody that I know has.
Okay. Now, and this is more for my curiosity and for the juries, I'm sure, when you were talking and testifying that, if you take and post a picture, like you snap a picture, are you saying, like, if I snap it and I send it, it disappears from my app? Are you saying it's going to be saved to my iPhotos, or is it just going to be saved within the data of the phone?
No, what I'm saying is there's two ways to do a snap. I can take a picture in here with my phone. I can load that picture into Snap. I can then put the banners on it and post it. So in that scenario, the disappearance capability is in effect for what is sent, but the original photograph used to generate that snap is still on the iPhone in the photo roll.
Okay, but if you just take it on Snap and then you don't save it to your roll, it just disappears, correct?
From the phone, yes,
Okay, from the phone.
yes.
Now, how good are you at math?
I can use Siri and a calculator.
Okay. So we're talking teenagers, would it be fair to say, especially these days, are prolific texters?
Yes.
And that is their primary source of communication.
Snapchat right now seems to be their primary one.
Yeah,
to use.
or it's sort of messaging and just not,
Correct.
no one wants to make a cell phone call.
Right.
Okay. She mentioned that there is in a 4-month span about 3,000 text messages roughly between her and Aiden, correct?
3,544. Yes.
Okay, so that's about a 4 months, correct?
June to October.
Okay, so that's 30 days on average in a month.
Mhm.
4 times 30 is 120. Agree with me?
Yes.
Okay. Would you also agree with me that 3,000 divided by 120 is just 25 texts a day on average?
Without doing the math, I would have to take your word for it.
Okay,
That's
taking my word as an officer of the court. Okay. So for a prolific texter, just 25 days, see him on, like 25 texts in a day seem unusual to you on average
For a teenager?
for a teenager.
No.
And then just one more question. In your experience, you've had a lot with the cell phones, but you're a cell phone expert. Would you agree that the average user, who, especially a teenager who uses Snapchat, thinks that if once they're deleted from Snapchat, they're gone for good? Would you think that most of them would believe that?
No, I don't think they do. I think they're smarter than that. Teenagers are smarter with their phones than we are. So I think they still have a level of suspicion that it's not really deleted. That's my opinion.
Do you have any kids? Out of curiosity?
I have raised 6 children.
Okay. Do you have experience
Lots.
with teenagers? Okay, pass the witness.
Just real quick, sir, with Ms. Jackson's math, that was assuming the text messages were every day, correct?
Based on her math, yes.
By that math. So if there were significant gaps in between the text threads, the dates of the threads, that would alter the math, correct?
Sure.
And some of these text messages, they're going through all hours of the evening, correct?
Correct.
And some of the text message, they're also indicating that they're talking to each other on Google Duo, correct?
These messages are, if I remember correctly, are not through Google Duo. These are text messaging.
But they're talking to each other on the phone for Google Duo.
Based on her testimony, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass the witness.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Vince, call your next witness.
Yes, I call Maribel Varju. She's in the waiting.
All right. And ladies and gentlemen, the defense has informed the court that this would be their last witness. All right, if you'll take a seat here, please. Can you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah.
All right, you can lower your hand. Make sure you keep your voice up for the members of the jury and the court reporter. If you could state your name, please.
Maribel Varju.
Can you please spell your, I'm sorry, Judge.
No problem.
Can you please spell your last name?
V like Victor, ARJU.
Okay. It's been a long day for everybody, so I'm gonna try to do this pretty quickly. Can you please turn and introduce yourself to the jury and tell them who you are?
My name is Maribel Varju. I am Isaiah's mother.
Have you been present during the testimony this week?
No.
You haven't been in the courtroom?
No.
Okay. Please tell us, how old is Isaiah?
27.
Is he your first son?
Second.
And how many sons do you have?
3.
Do you live here in San Antonio?
Shirts, Texas, so in the area.
Do you live, where were you living in 2020?
Same area.
And if you could just take yourself back to 2020, how far away did you live from where Isaiah was living?
It's about a 15-minute drive.
And Isaiah's son, how old was he at that time?
Less than 2 years.
Would you frequently visit your grandson?
Yes.
Now, and I'm sorry I missed it, about how far away was it from where Isaiah lived?
15 minutes.
Now, back in 2020, you remember what was happening in 2020, right?
Yes.
What happened in 2020 with Bear County?
Pandemic was going on.
And were you working at that time?
No.
So were you staying at home?
Yes.
And with you staying at home, did you spend time at Isaiah's house?
Pretty often, yes.
Who else lived with Isaiah?
Matthew, my oldest, Circa, Sharp, Nikolai.
And at that time, was Matthew still working?
Yes.
And what did he do for work?
He works at an auto dealership in the parts department.
So was that here in Bear County, Texas?
Yes, I believe it's considered Bear County.
And then Isaiah, back in 2020, what type of work was he doing?
Construction.
And was his job primarily here in Bear County?
They go all over, so a lot of his work is out of town, actually.
Okay. And when he would go out of town, was he out of town for just the day, or was it for significant portions of
For the
week?
whole week, yeah.
And then Circa, what was Circa doing for work back in April of 2020?
She worked at the Marriott.
And was she working during 2020?
She worked at the Marriott until they furloughed her.
And if you remember, okay, let's just, sorry to break it down, but Marriott, are you talking about the hotel?
The hotel, the resort out there on, I believe it's Evans.
And then you said the word furloughed. What do you mean by when she was furloughed?
They temporarily lay them off like unemployed. So, and then they ask them to kind of just wait until they bring them back on.
Okay, do you remember when she was furloughed?
I want to say around May, maybe.
Okay, and do you know how long she was furloughed for approximately?
I believe they didn't go back until September.
And that was September of 2020?
Yes,
Do you know if she was able to get another job during that summer, during that furlough time?
no, they were paying them, the unemployment rate and then they got like a little.
Gotcha. So is it fair to say that Circa was home a lot during May and September of 2020?
Objection, speculation, and leading.
Sustained.
Do you know where Circa spent her time in the summer of 2020?
At home with her son.
And why was that?
She didn't let Nikolai go out of the house. She was afraid that he would catch COVID.
And again, Nikolai was 2 years old, correct?
Less than 2 years old.
Now, please tell the jury, who else would come in and out of this house during that summertime?
There was, of course, Matthew and Isaiah, myself, my husband. Sometimes my son Timothy. He was also furloughed from the Marriott. I believe Isaiah's coworker from the construction job, because they worked together. He would drop him off sometimes. And then Circa's two siblings, sometimes it was Corey and Ava. That's pretty much it.
Okay. And then were you a part, and again, don't go into the details of the conversation or what was said, but were you a part of the conversation in October of 2018 between Circa and her mother Yolanda?
I was.
How was it that you were a part of this conversation?
I'm gonna object to relevance, Your Honor.
All right, y'all want to approach?
Oh. I apologize, ma'am. I was looking at when Nico was born. The conversation between Circa and her mother Yolanda in October of 2020. Were you a part of that conversation?
Yes,
Okay. Where, from what you remember, where did that conversation take place?
in my home,
Who was in your home?
Circa.
And then how was Yolanda involved in this conversation?
She called her on FaceTime.
And do you remember specifically what date that this conversation happened on?
I don't remember the exact date. I know it was in October, the middle, I want to say.
Do you remember the day or
Nikolai's-
week?
Excuse me,
Sorry.
stop.
It
So,
was-
stop. All right, you all can't talk over each other because the court reporter cannot take it down. So it needs to be a question and then an answer and then a question.
If I can help you. Do you remember what day of the week the conversation took place on?
It was a Friday.
A Friday. And as far as, do you know when the police were called?
That was some conflict there because she wasn't. Circa had said that her mom
Objection.
was,
Sustained.
Remember, we can't go into what anybody said. Let me ask you this.
it was,
Hold on.
sorry.
One moment. Okay, so we were talking about the conversation. Remember, you can't go into any of the details of what anybody said. I'm just simply asking you, do you remember what date the police were called? What day of the week? And if you don't remember, that's fine. This was 4 years ago.
I don't remember the day of the week. I just know it had to do with after her being in the hospital.
Okay, do you remember when Ava, and let me just clarify, who went into the hospital?
Ava.
And do you remember when Ava went into the hospital?
I believe it was on a weekend.
And then you remember that the police were then called after Ava went into the hospital?
I'm gonna object to leading, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Do you remember when the police were called?
They were called, to my recollection, they were called after she went into the hospital.
I will pass the witness.
State.
Just a few clarification questions, ma'am. Counsel asked you on direct examination, who was in and out of Circa and Isaiah's residence, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned a few names. Going back to 2020, to the best of your knowledge, how many times did Matthew go over to the house?
Matthew owns the house. He's
Right.
my eldest.
I understand that, but how
He
often?
lives in the house.
I understand that as well. I'm asking you, how frequently did he spend time in his own house? Maybe he had work travel, maybe there are other reasons.
He slowed down.
Maybe there were other reasons they're not in the home. I'm asking you, to the best of your knowledge, how many days a week would he spend in that house?
Every day.
And Isaiah, I know it's maybe a simple question, but how many times in an average week would Isaiah be in the house?
2 nights, if that, because some weekends he wouldn't come home.
And do you have a detailed memory of the weekends he was or wasn't home?
I do not, because I know that there was.
Thank you, ma'am. You've answered my question.
Okay.
With respect to your husband, do you know how frequently in 2020, how many times he went over to that residence?
Quite a lot. We were fixing things for my son from time to time, and he was unemployed during that summer.
But you can't put a number on it, can you?
I would say as often as I was.
And that would
I-
lead me to my next question, ma'am. I guess over the course of 2020, how many times were you over at that house residence?
Probably 3 to 4 times a week.
How many times was Timothy over there?
Maybe once a week,
And Isaiah's coworker?
whenever he was dropping him off or picking him up or whatever they hung out. I couldn't give you that number.
And Corey?
Corey, I didn't keep track on.
Right, so it sounds to me like you really can't have a solid track or count of how often each person was in the house. Is that fair to say?
Except for Circa and Matthew.
Right, but other than them, you weren't keeping like a log of who was in and
Who
out.
else? No.
So you weren't keeping track, correct?
Besides the fact that Circa and Matthew, no.
Did you keep track of their whereabouts at all times?
Pretty much, because we kept in contact when it came to COVID and making sure that the baby was covered and that he was being taken care of if she needed help with anything. As far as if groceries were needed and I could pick something up for them, yes.
Okay, but my question was about tracking them. And did you track these individuals or just
Track
communicate?
them, no, but I kept in contact. You said contact, sorry.
Well, ma'am, and also
I
too for the future.
apologize.
If you could please let me finish my question before answering. Are there days in the year 2020 where you are unsure who was in the home?
In the entire year of 2020? Yeah, there's days I'm unsure.
More than one?
Yeah.
More than 10?
Yes, in the entire year, yes.
Let's just go to the beginning of the year. Are there days where you are completely unaware of who was in and out of the house that day?
In the entire year, sure.
We can even go specific. Let's talk about April, May, June, July. Are there days in that month where you have absolutely no idea who was in the home that day?
There's, yes.
No further questions.
Defense?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. Defense, call your next witness.
No other witnesses, Your Honor.
All right, do you rest?
Yes, Your
State, do you close?
Yes, Your Honor, we rest and close.
Defense, do you close?
Honor. Rest and close, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is what is going to happen. I'm going to have you all back here tomorrow at 9:30. At 9:30, what will happen is both parties will have an opportunity after I read the jury charge to give their closing arguments to you. Again, remember my instructions. You're not to start deliberating internally with yourself. You're not allowed to deliberate with each other. You're not allowed to watch anything about this case. If you see something, you're to disregard it, turn it off. Does everyone understand? You're not allowed to do any investigation because everything that you need to know about this case is to come from. All right, so I'll see you all tomorrow at 9:30. There should be parking space available because we don't have jurors coming down on Friday unless someone is specifically called for a panel. All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors.